to do within the next half hour will be to give you an overview of the social enterprise sector in Singapore. Currently, it is estimated that there exists about 100 social enterprises in Singapore, but most of these social enterprises tend to be of the work integration model. This is not surprising because the government actually administers a seed fund. It's called the Comcare Enterprise Fund, and this fund actually provides startup social enterprises with seed funding for 2 years, for the first 2 years. And these will be social enterprises that create training and job opportunities for the needy, disadvantaged communities. For example, ex-offenders, out-of-school youth, people with disabilities like intellectual, physical disabilities, people with psychiatric disabilities, people living with HIV/AIDS, single mothers with low educational level. So since 2003, the Comcare Enterprise Fund has seed funded about, I think, almost 70 such social enterprises. But the government is determined to further develop the social enterprise sector. So in August 2006, it set up a social enterprise committee to look at how the sector can be further developed. So the committee finished their research, I think, early this year. And so it came up with 26 recommendations. Out of these 26 recommendations, the two most important ones would be the government is hoping to encourage the sector to set up a social enterprise association, and also the government hopes to set up a social enterprise development center. Let me give you some examples of such work integration social enterprises in Singapore. Probably the largest one would be SCORE, or the Singapore Corporation of Rehabilitative Enterprises. This is actually a government agency located within the prison. What it does, it runs a lot of factory workshops, providing employment and training to prisoners, and also as the prisoners are about to be released from prison, they would be provided with this referral service for future employment outside of the prison. Another example is BizLink Center. BizLink Center started out as a government agency, but it was corporatized a few years ago. What this center does is it creates jobs for people with physical disabilities. So it runs a sheltered workshop. The sheltered workshop takes on subcontracting jobs from companies like Singapore Airlines, NTUC Income, which is a huge insurance company in Singapore. So the people employed, they would be helping out with data entry, and then some of the other employees also take on packaging jobs, maybe packaging DVDs or CDs. So that's BizLink Center. Then another example is Teen Challenge Enterprises. It was set up by Teen Challenge Singapore, which is a Christian-based organization focusing on providing social services to ex-offenders. So a few years ago, they set up a very successful house and office removal service. And more recently, they have also moved into digital media. So the people they employ are ex-offenders as well as young offenders and people recovering from substance abuse. Next, another example is E-Class Holdings. E-Class was set up by Pertapis, which is a Malay-Muslim social service organization. They run a relatively successful food catering service, and the kitchen employs ex-offenders, recovering substance abusers, as well as single mothers with low education. Next, another example is the young entrepreneur Masru. This is an interesting example. It was set up by Ilim Shu, who is a Christian successful entrepreneur, now social entrepreneur. So her calling is to help out-of-school youth. So what this social enterprise does is it actually matches out-of-school youth with successful real estate agents. So the youth act as assistants to the real estate agents, and once the real estate agents close a deal, the youth will get a certain cut of the commission. Another example is Dignity Links. Dignity Links was set up by two very devout Buddhists. So these two social entrepreneurs decided to help people with psychiatric disabilities. They opened a cafe, Barrister Express, in the financial district. Old School, this is another interesting example. It was set up by City Harvest Education Center, which is a private school set up by City Harvest Church. The school actually takes in students who drop out from the public school education because they were underperforming. So anyway, recently City Harvest Education Center set up a dance school called Old School. And the people that they employ would also be like out-of-school youths, but they are very talented in street dance forms like street jazz or hip-hop. So what they have done is they have managed to create employment for these very talented youths. They are now dance instructors. The classes are very popular with young people. So they do make a lot of money, and the profits actually are channeled back to City Harvest Education Center as scholarship money for some of the more needy students in the education center. So it's a very interesting model. Looking at all these various examples plus other social enterprises that I've studied, I have identified a couple of challenges as well as characteristics of the center. So one big problem or challenge for the sector is it still lacks constitutive legitimacy. It is still not a taken for granted organizational form. And there are actually two reasons for that. One reason would be the lack of public awareness. When you talk to a lot of Singaporeans and you tell them, oh, this is a social enterprise, what comes to their mind would be, is this a charity? So that's one misperception. The second misconception is some people think that social enterprise is a form of corporate social responsibility. So there's still a lot of ambiguity in the Singapore context. What is social enterprise? Then a related problem is a lot of the marginalized communities that the work integration social enterprises attempt to help are still very much discriminated against, like ex-offenders, people with a history of drug addiction, people living with HIV/AIDS, people with mental illness, psychiatric disabilities. So there still is a lot of prejudice and discrimination that's prevalent in our society. So we really hope that with increasing public awareness, people will tend to snap out of the charity mode. Because in Singapore, when you think of charities, you think that, oh, since this charity is giving this product or service, we deserve a discount. So for instance, digital art social enterprise, they often get inquiries from people who want to buy the digital art. But these inquirers would ask if they can get a discount, because anyway, these are people who are not going to be employed, and we are actually helping them. So don't we deserve a discount for the service? So it's still a very prevalent sort of thinking. Another school of thought among Singaporeans is that we buy things from charity not because we need those objects, not because they are good quality objects, but because we pity them. So this is another thing that probably needs to change before social enterprises can take off in Singapore. And also, once you have more public awareness, it will be easier for social enterprises in Singapore to recruit good managers and professionals. Right now, most social entrepreneurs will tell you they have a problem getting talented people to come in. Of course, another reason is they cannot afford to pay the salaries that the corporate world does. So that's another challenge. This other issue that I raised earlier, this is more challenging, prejudice and discrimination. So, for example, when Dignity Links set up Barrister Express in Clifford Centre, the other tenants were very upset. They were very upset with the landlord. Why do you allow this group of mad people to come into our building? They will be endangering our lives because they are a safety hazard. So you still get this sort of thinking and this sort of feelings is very common in Singapore. And like when E-Class Holdings does catering, sometimes the customers, when they find out the food is actually prepared by ex-offenders, they do feel a bit uncomfortable. Likewise, when Teen Challenge Enterprises first set up the house and office removal service, people were concerned, can I trust ex-prisoners to help me move the things in my house? Because who knows, they may all be gone by the time I move to my new house. So it's this sort of thinking that is still quite prevalent. Then another characteristic that we find very common in the social enterprise sector would be co-optation. So as I mentioned earlier, a lot of social enterprises lack managerial and professional talent. So what they do is they actually have collaboration with corporations as well as other non-profit organizations. A good example would be Dignity Links. When it set up Barrister Express, it actually roped in 2 corporate partners, Secret Recipe, which runs a chain of very successful restaurants, and Select Catering, which is a very reputable caterer in Singapore. So these 2 companies came in to give expert advice to Dignity Links in the setting up of the cafe. Of course, Dignity Links also works closely with the Institute of Mental Health, which is the main national mental health care organization in Singapore. So the Institute of Mental Health would bring in their occupational therapists, their psychologists, their psychiatrists to work alongside Dignity Links, for instance, in designing the job flow for the employees. So there's a lot of borrowing of expertise from both the profit sector as well as the non-profit sector. Then another interesting thing that we find in the social enterprises in Singapore is a lot of them seem to be embedded in very tight exchange relationships with specific organizations. So a good example is BizLink Center. As I mentioned earlier, 2 of its largest customers will be Singapore Airlines and NTUC Income. So these big corporations bring in projects to visiting centers employees. This is good because it provides stability in terms of employment, but the flip side is that there's always this fear these corporate partners could one day withdraw from the partnership. Then what will happen to our employees? So overnight, you could be left without any projects, and that's a very scary thought. Before I conclude, I thought I would like to perhaps also share with you some examples of non-work integration social enterprises. So these social enterprises cannot benefit from the ComCare Enterprise Fund because they are not in the nature of creating training and job opportunities for needy, disadvantaged. So these examples, they have not unfortunately got funding from the government through the ComCare Enterprise Fund. One example is Post Museum. This is a very interesting experiment. It was started by two art curators, a husband and wife team. So they also happen to be social activists. So what they have done is they have created this cultural space bringing in like-minded people. So these are artists, designers, architects, and also people involved in community development. So this space actually has a lot of exhibitions, workshops, classes, and also residency programs, research and publication. So it's a really nice place for social activist types to gather together, exchange ideas, and also to bring in the public, because through the art exhibitions, the public gets educated on various social causes. And recently, Post Museum set up a sister company called Food Number 03. It's a vegetarian restaurant, and in this restaurant, you can also buy free trade products. And the profits generated from this restaurant will be plowed back to Post Museum. Then, another interesting example of a non-work integration social enterprise would be School of Thought. School of Thought was set up by 3 ex-public school teachers. They decided to set up a tuition center, but this is a tuition center with a difference, because during the classes, the students will be challenged to reflect on their role in society, and also challenged to see how later on they can make a difference in the larger community. So basically, the teachers see this as a breeding ground for social activism. The tuition classes are very heavily subscribed, so in fact they have a long waiting list of people who want to come in. Firstly, because the tuition fees is cheap. Secondly, the teachers are really good, and people who have gone through the tuition classes, they have got straight A's. So this is the sort of reputation they have built up for themselves. So recently, School of Thought has also set up a food social enterprise called Food for Thought. It's a very nice diner, very good food, and the profits that they make from Food for Thought, they go back to provide scholarship money for the students at the tuition center, and also they mandate that a certain percentage of their profits will go towards supporting social causes, for example, World Vision. Then, another example, World Toilet Organization was started by Jack Sim. Jack Sim, today he's recognized by both Ashoka and Shaw as a fellow. Jack was visionary in the sense that he realized there's a real big need in many developing countries to improve toilet and sanitation conditions. So he set up this World Toilet Organization, which is like a global network platform. And every year or every other year, he would organize the summit, the expo, and the forum. And more recently, he set up a sister organization, World Toilet College, which actually provides certification training programs for people in the toilet and sanitation industry, basically to professionalize and legitimize the industry as something that is useful to society. So with that, I come to a close, and thank you very much.